here with Miss Tiffany, owner of Wild Geese Bookstore in Franklin, Indiana. Thanks for letting us jump in here and put you on the spot.
No, thanks for coming.
This is one of my favorite places ever, and so I'm really glad that we can get you surrounded by all these books in your natural habitat.
Thanks for coming.
My first question is always, why Indiana?
We moved here for my husband's job. And at the time, I was still practicing law, and it's hard to find a succinct way to say it, but we moved here for his work at the college, and I was still doing that other work, and took a chance on renting some office space for that work that also had an empty area in the front, and a retail space kind of came about.
It just kind of worked its way out.
Yeah, I'd always wanted to do this, but never knew how. And I do think this community makes it possible in a way that a lot of other communities wouldn't support a business. So the other places that we lived either already had an independent bookstore, or I just didn't feel the support would be there. And Franklin is really unique in that it supports small business.
Yeah, you're such a cheerleader for Franklin too.
Oh man, I just love the people here because there's a resilience in the people here that's very creative. And I came after the flood of 2008, but the flood in 2008 really brought the community together. And there was definitely a lot of, how do we make this better than even it was before? And I think that momentum is still there. So there's not a sense of, I'm gonna complain about my town and what it doesn't have. Usually there's somebody who says, hey, let's make this better. And how do we do that? And how do we help others do what they're trying to do to make the town better? And that's what I like.
Yeah, and I feel like whenever we see a crisis like that or something else, have you ever seen that quote that's like, you see the women first?
Yeah, you do. I was very moved when we had a lot of people at Atterbury, which is nearby, who were displaced because they had helped U.S. soldiers during the conflict in Afghanistan, and they needed to leave. And so it's hard to find a succinct way to say this, but there were a lot of people who were displaced from Afghanistan living in Atterbury. And the USO is somebody who we had worked with in the past, and so there was a call out for resources. And I was very moved by people in the community who, a lot of women too, who were like, oh, what do they need? How can we help? And we had women knitting baby hats for the new babies that were born there, and blankets, and bringing supplies. And there wasn't a question of, is this a worthy cause? It was just, how can I help? And I really like that pitch-in attitude of, my dad was former Army, and so I put him in charge of delivering things. So he was running basically a shuttle between Franklin, like everything that people would deliver, we were taking down there, and really we were doing it so quickly that we were able, because we were small, we could mobilize a lot faster and get aid before even a lot of federal aid was around. So it was just nice to see customers kind of rallying around that.
Yeah, I always talk about how collaborative the Indiana women entrepreneur world is. Do you have any fun stories you want to share about that, or any shout outs?
Oh, gracious. Well, of course, I love Leslie at Indy Maven. I think she's such a champion for women in business, and really brings people together. I think her gift is just connecting people and saying, you know what, you're great at this and you're great at this. You should know each other. Yeah. And in the time of loneliness, when loneliness is at like epic proportions, I see her as a problem solver of that, and somebody who really sees like the synergy would be so much more palpable if they came together. So I see her that way. I will say a lot of other independent bookstore owners are women in Indiana, and we work together a lot. There's definitely things that are in parts of the state that are better suited for one of our stores, and we try to reach out and say, oh, you know what, this is in your backyard, why don't you take this one, kind of thing. So I think we all know how challenging it can be, and I heard someone say once that small business is sort of like flying a kite. Some days you're in the trees, some days you're in the gutter, some days you're in the air, and you just have to kind of get comfortable with that. And I think if you've gone through it and you're working on it, you want other people, you want to help other people get their knots untied. I think you can.
I love that. Yeah. don't think I've ever heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Oh, sure.
Anything you want to tell anybody about? I know you always have an amazing event calendar.
Oh, thank you. Well, we try to come up with, I love Priya Parker's The Art of Gathering. It's this great book, and talks about like the intention of when we gather, and we try to find ways to meaningfully bring people together around a book or an occasion that makes people feel less alone and more connected, and see how we actually belong to each other. And so that's really our focus. Our mission is that everyone feels respected and welcome here, and less alone. We just worked with the Art Craft Theater and the Knitting Otter, which is another women-owned business, and we showed Little Women at the Art Craft, and it was a lights up movie, so you could watch the film and knit. They had a table there with a bunch of knitting stuff, and we had Little Women books and things like that. And I heard so many people say, I usually do this by myself, and this was so nice to be out with other people. And it was just this reminder that not everybody wants a big loud gathering. There are lots of ways to gather, and there are lots of ways to find like meaningful connection. Yeah. And we try to have a lot of different kinds of events, so that if you like a smaller gathering that's quieter, or you want something that's a lot more like honky tonk, we have that's what they say where I'm from, then there's a little bit of both available.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Oh,
Can't wait
thanks.
for the next thing.
Yeah, thanks so much. Y'all come see us.